Welcome, critters. I'm Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 23, Part 2, and joining me today is Atlas. Yay!
Hello.
So, the icebreaker for today is, what is your favorite restaurant?
So my favorite restaurant is a tiny little mom and pop joint in the middle of nowhere that serves the best Italian food I have ever eaten. Unfortunately, I haven't been there since I was like 12 and I don't remember the name. I have like this very distinct memory of this one restaurant in the middle of nowhere that I need to find again. Because nothing else has ever lived up to it.
I mean, is it relatively nearby?
No, no,
Yeah.
that'd be too much to ask for.
Yeah, it's not something that you could like devote a day trip to.
No, it is somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. So, nope.
Yes. I mean, I kind of have a similar problem with my favorite restaurant. It's called Tijuana Flats. It's a regional chain down in Florida. And I fell in love with them during college. I went to college down in Florida. And it's this, not necessarily like Taco Bell level, but like a little above Taco Bell level type of restaurant. And they have a hot sauce bar and they make like all of their own proprietary hot sauces. Nice. And it's like all kinds of different hot sauces. B, they have the most amazing avocado ranch dressing that I have ever had. And since going vegan, I've been meaning to like recreate it somehow because like I would buy that stuff in buckets, drown everything in it. And they have the best taco salad that I've ever had. Like, taco salads are one of my core foods. Like, if you give me, like, if I had to choose 3 foods to eat for the rest of my life, it would be sushi, pho, and taco salad. Like, between those 3. And I have not been able to replicate their taco salad. No matter where I go, no matter what taco salads I get, I cannot replicate their taco salad. And I live all the way in the Pacific Northwest, and so it's literally on the other side of the country, like the opposite corner from where I am. So the best I can do is order their hot sauce.
So I'm there's some joke in there about, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah. I mean, because it's got a total vibe to the restaurant. Like, each restaurant has these crazy murals on the wall, and like each restaurant has like a theme to it, like space cowboys riding dinosaurs kind of murals, and it's just like an absolute vibe. And the food is so good, and it's on the other side of the country, and I never go to Florida, and I'm not going to Florida right now because fuck that corner of the country right now.
Fair.
But yes, I have a similar problem in the sense of I cannot access it at the moment.
Yeah, someday maybe.
Yeah. Once Florida calms down a little bit, I might.
Good luck with that.
Well, he has to go away at some point, right?
In theory.
Well, please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure of story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And as always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well. So please comment, like, subscribe below. And ready? All right, let's dive in. Vox Machina have just recently returned to the divine city of Vasselheim after visiting the Fire Ashari with Keyleth, and Grog decided to demand a rematch fight with Kern the Hammer at the Crucible fighting pit, and won in the first half of this episode. So in the second half, the group has retired to the Bella's Respite Inn and are joining celebratory drinks. I don't know why that sentence makes no sense, but it's just there. They are having celebratory drinks, joining to have celebratory drinks. There's something missing there. They are drinking their way through the afternoon, point blank. Keyleth asks the group if there's anything they need to do before they head out of town to go pick up their money in Craghammer, and Percy asks to pick up some ore. Tiberius also mentions that he thinks that they might be able to visit House Thunderbrand while they're in Craghammer in order to re-enchant their flying carpet. They found some items for that family when they ventured into the Underdark and might be able to call in a favor when they deliver those items. Vax asks Tiberius if House Thunderbrand would be able to erase the image of his sister's tits from his brain, and Vex objects, saying that he was standing behind her when she flashed Grog during the fight, so he didn't even see them. Scanlan pipes in and says he definitely saw them, and Tiberius asks him to describe them for him sometime. Scanlan says he will draw them in great detail, and Keyleth says she wasn't there to see them either. Percy suggests that they leave drawing them in great detail to the internet, breaking the fourth wall. Vex defends herself, saying she was caught in the moment of passion and that she's sorry. She says she will do anything for Grog, as well as the 600 gold that she bet on the fight. Scanlan asks, oh, it was for the money? Vax says that he was right there, and there was clearly no other way around the situation. Percy agrees that you've got to do what you've got to do. Scanlan says, listen, I would show any part of me for like 2 gold. Grog immediately gives him 2 gold. Scanlan shows him his third dimple. He says he can put it wherever he wants because it's magical. Tiberius asks where Craghammer is. Keyleth asks what time it is, then announces that they are day drunk. Tiberius asks if they are ready to go, and Scanlan says there are 2 things he wants to address. One, he wants to ask why they're going to Craghammer to fix the carpet, and Tiberius answers that they're really going there to collect their money, but will ask if they can get the carpet fixed too. Scanlan also asks if anyone else has a nagging feeling about the cloaked individual who has praised Grog's performance in the fighting pit, should they investigate to see who he was. Grog says that the individual did have a very lovely beard, so Vex flags down a barkeep to ask about it. And they are told that he is named Earthbreaker Grun, the Dawn Marshal of the entirety of the Braving Grounds in Vasselheim. He is the highest esteemed cleric of the god Kord. The barkeep tells them that it's a true honor that the Earthbreaker approved of Grog's fight, and Grog asks where they could find him. Keyleth asks if he's the Pope of Kord, but the barkeep doesn't understand her question, so Tiberius says, don't mind her, she's young. Keyleth says that she's foreign, and Percy says it might be because of the antlers she wears on her head. She asks what's wrong with her antlers, and he says there's nothing wrong with them, but it's a perfectly reasonable reason why someone wouldn't take her seriously. Tiberius says he thinks they should all leave and asks Scanlan if he is satisfied in his knowledge. Scanlan says he is always satisfied, and Tiberius asks Grog if he would like to go to a pub. They tell him that that's literally what they are currently doing at a pub, drinking right that moment, and Keyleth insists again that they are day drunk. Percy says he is a slightly inebriated thought. He has a slightly inebriated thought. Apparently I was inebriated when I wrote this out. And Tiberius walks out of the tavern. Percy says he can probably find the ore he needs while they also look for this Grun fellow, and Grog can strike up a conversation with him. Grog says that he would like both of the twins to go with him as well as Scanlan, and Tiberius comes back into the tavern after pissing outside. Vex says, well, if they have had plenty to drink, but Tiberius interrupts and says that he's fine. He's been drinking plenty of water. Keyleth says that she has already been arrested once today, but she could do better. Percy leaves the tavern and follows the smell of blacksmithy stuff to find a small house on the outskirts of the Braving Grounds. He knocks and finds a very amusing character by the name of Victor, asking to buy some black powder. Victor invites him inside, and Percy gingerly steps in and realizes that the whole place is a massive fire hazard with piles of explosive substances and construction scraps everywhere. He tells Percy that there are not many people who come asking for the black powder and seems very enthusiastic to sell it to him. Percy asks for a barrel or a hogshead's worth. Spitting and lisping, as Victor is wont to do, he tells him that it would be a little over 4,000 gold for the barrel and a little over 400 for the hogshead's worth. Percy says he'll buy the hogshead's worth for 400 even. and Victor will point him to where he could buy some ore. Victor says he doesn't sell ore, but Percy says he might have a friend. He rolls 25 on his persuasion check, and Victor agrees to everything. Victor jams the hog's head into a pile of black powder, fills it up, and hands it to Percy, then grabs his hand and pulls him out of the house. He points Percy down the street to a red building, saying to tell them Victor sent him. Percy thanks him, and Victor tells him to come back when he needs more black powder. In shock, he walks over to the red building and finds a blacksmith, Samson, inside working at an anvil. He knocks and says Victor sent him as Samson steps outside, asking him what the old coot sent him for. Percy says he's looking for some ore, but will not invite himself in since he's now covered in explosive powder. Samson agrees, then asks him what he's looking for. Percy asks for 1,000 gold pieces worth of ore, but Samson says it would be quite a lot for that amount. Percy then asks for 100 pounds worth of ore, and Samson offers it for 400 gold pieces. He counters with 350 and offers to always shower twice before entering his premises when he comes for his next purchase. He rolls a 24 on his persuasion check, and Samson agrees. Percy thanks him and flatters him as Samson loads the ingots onto a cart for him. Meanwhile, Grog, Scanlan, and the twins go to find Earthbreaker Groon, while Keyleth and Tiberius continue drinking. Scanlan says Keyleth can go get arrested again, but she says that's not fair, while Tiberius teaches his pet dragon Lockheed another trick. Grog, Vex, and Vax find the trial forge at the center of the Braven Grounds, and a man at the door questions them, asking why they are there. Vex says that the Crucible champion is here to speak with the Earthbreaker, and Vax says that the Earthbreaker is a fan of Grog. The man says he highly doubts that, but they are eventually let inside. The guards say that only Grog is allowed in the central chamber, but the twins and Scanlan must stand at a distance. They walk into a room with a black marble floor and are led to the center of a temple where there is a raised dais with a beam of light coming down from above. There is a figure sitting at the top of the dais. Only Grog is invited to step forward, and Scanlan asks if he needs them with him. Grog says he doesn't like talking, and Vex tells the guard that Grog is not great at talking, offering to have someone come and translate for him. The guard doesn't answer, just points to Grog again and gestures for him to enter. As Grog starts walking forward, Vax turns to the guard and says, "Sorry, but we've been day drinking, and I'd hate to interrupt that. Is there a place where we could watch him?" Scanlan chides him for bringing that up in a temple, and the guard motions for them to stay right where they are. Scanlan says he must be doing a vow of silence, so they must respect that as well as make fun of it when he is gone. Vax whispers to Vex that he's got a flask, and Grog continues on to find a stained glass domed roof above the dais. Sitting in the center with eyes closed is the Earthbreaker. Grog steps forward and says, "Sorry to disturb," but he's looking for Earthbreaker Groon. The figure stands and rotates to face Grog, eyes still closed, until he finally opens them and pins him with eyes that glow white. He says, "You have found the Earthbreaker. What do you ask of me?" Grog says he keeps the little bit of pea that is about to fall out from falling out, and says it seems that the Earthbreaker had seen Grog's tussle and he's come to introduce himself. Groon says, "You're Grog the Victorious," and Grog gets super excited and says, "That's right." Groon says, "Once called Philip, once one of Vox Machina, the traveling band from Amon, slayer of demons that once usurped Uriel himself. I know of your travels," he says. "I know of your deeds. What else do you ask of the Earthbreaker?" Grog says that he didn't really come to ask. He only meant to say that Vox Machina is at his disposal if Groon would ever need anyone outside of the amazing braving grounds. Groon softens a bit and says, "Your piety is accepted. Perhaps there may be a use for cord of you and your compatriots in the future. Should this day arise, you will know, but you must hurry. Dark times are ahead. I can see the veils twisting. Many, many evil minds come to rend the peace apart. There will be a day I call for you, Grog the Victorious. Stay alive." Grog says that he means to and thanks the Earthbreaker. Groon dismisses him and sits back down. Grog immediately turns around to find the others saying, "Guys, his eyes are fucking glowing." They compliment him for keeping it together, and Scanlan asks if he should shit anywhere, but Grog says no. They scurry out of there, and finally they all reconvene at the Bellows Respite, finding Percy with his hog's head of powder and cart of ore. They ask Percy if he wants to put the ore in the bag of holding while Keyleth examines the hogshead, and Scanlan suggests they go find Captain Damon and get on the airship. Tiberius starts casting Circle of Teleportation, and they notice from afar that the airship is just in the process of finishing attaching upgraded ballista launchers onto the sides. Vax rewinds time a little bit and says he got some tattoos while they were wandering around town, getting a VM in Elvish on one wrist and a 20-sided shape on the other. Tiberius finishes his Circle of Teleportation and chooses Amon, as they all ask confusedly about their travel plans, but trust him anyways and jump into the circle. They find themselves in the center of the Traverse Junction in the Alabaster Lyceum in Amon. They argue a bit more about travel times. Then Vex pops outside to speak with gatekeeper Xanthus, who tries to convince them to fill out the proper paperwork this time. She reminds him that they are good friends of Sovereign Uriel, and they do not need to. Xanthus says that that's not true, that he had his ass chewed out by his supervisor last time they came through. He slaps the paperwork in front of her, and Vax pulls it over to him, starting to fill it out while Vex tries to convince Percy to do it. Keyleth says she thought they had a lawyer for this, and Scanlan walks forward, introduces himself as Burt Reynolds Esquire, but Tiberius interrupts him and starts making X's all over the papers. Vax says that Uriel is not going to be pleased about this. Xanthus says that he's looking forward to it, and Scanlan asks if they have a bathroom around here. Tiberius tells him to hold it, and Xanthus points Scanlan down the hall to the left while Vax finishes up the paperwork, leaving the final signature for Scanlan. Scanlan returns, buttons up his fly, and signs it. Then Vex and Xanthus start thanking each other very passive-aggressively, each trying to have the last word. They eventually leave, and Scanlan tells them that he's shit in the hallway. Percy suggests that they take a few days to recuperate, and Keyleth says, hey, look, we've now been drunk in 2 different cities today. Vex responds that she's not drunk, and Scanlan asks if their next destination is Craghammer. They say yes again, and he suggests they take a night and then set out in the morning. Tiberius asks if they want to continue drinking, and Keyleth says they haven't been home in a really long time and she needs to water the garden. Tiberius reminds her that they have servants to do that, and Keyleth says that they don't do it in the right way. The group heads toward Grey Skull Keep and find Cordell, the half-orc they hired as a guard keeping watch. Outside their gate, though, they find a burlap tent of sorts, and Scanlan asks Cordell what it is. Shane, their other guard, tells them that the tent has been there for about 2 weeks now, and they hear some rustling as a face pops out of it. Vex stomps over and finds a young man who greets them excitedly, calling out Percy and Keyleth and Tiberius, praising them each individually. He calls out Scanlan, saying he's heard tales. He points out the twins and the mighty muscled Grog. He introduces himself as Kynan, son of Harold the Butcher, and declares his wish to join them in their travels. Vex says, oh, darling, you're so brave and strong. And Tiberius says, well, you're welcome to do so. The group immediately objects, and Kynan said it would be an honor. Scanlan says this is not an open enrollment situation, and Kynan says that he can prove himself. He has been training day and night as a swordsman, hoping to join them. He says he trained under the ex-captain of the guard in Amon, and Tiberius motions to open the gates to the keep. Vex rolls an insight check, and Vax takes the opportunity to knock Kynan in the back of the head with the pommel of his dagger. Tiberius heads inside the keep, and Kynan falls unconscious from Vax's attack, who then immediately shoves a healing potion into the young man's mouth and brings him back to consciousness. Vex takes him by the lapels and tells him that things move very fast with them. He says that he doesn't think Kynan understands what he's asking for, but Kynan just moons over Vax, extolling the tales of his fighting prowess. Kynan asks Vax to show him his ways. Vax starts listing all of the dangerous creatures and monsters they have fought. He says, I know it seems cool with Vex flashing her boobs and Scanlan singing his songs. It's all excitement, but it's dangerous. He says Kynan could die any day, so could Vax, so could Vex, so could Scanlan. He asks, are you really interested in this? He rolls a 16 on his intimidation check, and Kynan says, I thought you were heroes. I took 2 weeks to meet you. Vex asks her brother, how could you do this? And Vax asks for Kynan's name again. Vex says it's Kynan, and Kynan says it doesn't matter. He pushes Vax away and says he just wanted to be a hero. Vax says, wait, as Scanlan says to send him on a mission. But Vax tells Kynan to come back when he's ready. Come back, train yourself, and I will personally be your mentor. He rolls a natural 20 on his persuasion check, and Kynan asks, do you mean that? Vax says, I do. You will be my right-hand man, I promise. Kynan agrees, saying he will make them proud. He runs back to his tent and gathers up his things. Vax kneels next to him, says, I was once like you. I didn't know what I wanted or where I was going. I just want you to be ready. When we come back, we'll start over. Kynan vanishes into the distance, and Keyleth says that Vax might have just sent him to his death. Vex asks, why did you have to knock him out? Vax says that they almost died themselves in the temple, and Keyleth argues back, but now you've put expectations in his head. Vax says, or asks, so we should have made him a full-fledged member today, right now, or make him a butler? He doesn't want to do that. Keyleth says that's not what she was suggesting at all, and Vax turns around to find Tiberius waiting for him just inside the gates. Tiberius asks Vax, why did you do that to that young man? Vax says he was not ready. Tiberius says, stop it. That was aggressive beyond necessity. You should have trialed the boy. Keyleth says that was his trial. Tiberius argues back, that was not a trial. Scanlan says, we'll see if he comes back. Tiberius says to Vax, you are far more powerful. They could have put Kynan to work. Keyleth asks, you think he would have been happy with that? She says she's not even happy that they told him to go off and continue training. She thinks that his continuing to train is a bad idea. Vax says that Kynan now knows the facts. He knows his skill level and he knows where he stands. He will either go back to being a son of a butcher or he will come back to me. If he comes back to me, I will train him. If not, it wasn't meant to be. Tiberius says that he respects and fears Vax and Grog the most because they are cunning and strong. Scanlan asks, what am I, chopped liver? Tiberius says, I could crush you in one blow. Vax asks, what about me? Tiberius says, I fear you and I am slightly attracted to you as well. But Grog and Vax, you are the strongest and noblest and most cunning. Scanlan interrupts, saying, you live because I let you live. Tiberius says, believe what you believe. I'm saying when it comes to things, sometimes you really rush into stuff, speaking to Vax here, and you could just be chill sometimes. At that point, they hear a voice call out across the courtyard of the keep, and they turn to find their housekeeper, Lena, rushing out to greet them. She hugs each of them and greets them enthusiastically as Tiberius gives Vax a friendly pinch on the butt. Lena pulls out a piece of magical paper out of her pocket and writes something on it. As the paper disappears, she tells them that she was given it by Seeker Assume of the council so that he could be notified when they returned. Vex tells her maybe in the future, wait until we tell you that you can do that, and Lena apologizes. Scanlan suggests that they tell the guards that next time there's a tent outside the keep, they should just burn it down, but the rest of the group objects, and Lena says that she brought Kynan biscuits every morning because he was so sweet. Vax tells her to let him in the keep if he comes back, and let him use Vax's room in the meantime. Vex asks him, feeling guilty that you knocked him out, brother? He replies, no, I feel perfectly justified, and Tiberius says, you shouldn't. Keyleth says, I think you are, and Grog asks, can we rest before we go see Seeker Assume? They all head inside, and Lena starts preparing a welcome home meal for them. They take time to rest and eat and miss Pike. Vex asks Scanlan, how do you look through your poo, referring to his magic scribe poo that he's left in the temple in Vasselheim to keep tabs on Pike. Scanlan says that he is feeling a bit Pike sick right now and he could check in on her. Vex tells him to try and tell them what he sees unless she's naked. Scanlan says, of course, I would stop looking if she were naked. Scanlan attempts to scry and sees the partially uncovered temple of Sarenrae. In the distance, a small white-haired Pike giving instructions to the workers and helping them carry stones. He drops out of the scry and tells the group what he saw. He says she was radiant and beautiful, powered by the light of Sarenrae, and she is everything that we think of her and more. She is beautiful and charming, and let's just let it be known that I could kill Tiberius if I wanted to. Tiberius says it's fine. Yes, you can. Scanlan says that that's beside the point, and he misses Pike and can look in on her at any time they want. Vax raises his flask and cheers to Pike, the best in all of us. As they drink, Erwin, their halfling manservant, calls them to the meal. They sit down and eat. A little ways into the meal, Cordell lets them know that they have a visitor, a counselor. Vex asks Cordell to ask their visitor if he wants some fried chicken, and Keyleth asks if he's okay if they're a bit tipsy. Cordell leaves and returns with Seeker Assume, who greets them. He says he has some business to discuss with them, and Keyleth whines, asking, is it bad news? We're not in the mood for bad news. He says it's not bad news, just something he wants to run by them. Grog tells him, please feel free to speak. He joins them at their table and tells them that while they were gone, a venture has been put into motion, a celebration of the construction of a bridge across the Shearing Channel to the eastern continent of Wynandir. A dinner has been arranged in the coming week to discuss the project, helmed by a Lord and Lady Briarwood of Whitestone. They are en route as they speak, and the bridge will open trade routes between the two continents. Assume has come to them because he noticed that Percy had shifted very uncomfortably at the mention of the Briarwoods last time they were mentioned. Percy says, had I? I hadn't noticed. Assume says, I did. Percy says that he has had dealings with them before and they are untrustworthy. Assume agrees that he has had his own reservations about them, and Percy says, you should. Assume says that his network has been closely watching their acquisition of Whitestone since the DeRollo family fell to disease, Percy's family, and has found more questions than answers. He has sent operatives to inquire further, but each has sent Assume a letter of resignation instead of choosing to stay within Whitestone under Assume's employ. So he suggested that Sovereign Uriel send them an invitation to this coming dinner, and he asks that Vox Machina attend as well. He asks the group to keep an eye on everything as Assume does his work. Percy sighs and says, yes, they will attend. Assume says he will contact them in the coming days to discuss it further, but until then, he hopes they enjoy the rest of their meal. He gets up to leave, and Keyleth asks when this dinner is happening. Assume replies in a week, and Percy excuses himself, saying that he has a bit of work to attend to. The rest of the group confirms the details, and Tiberius asks about the dress requirements. He is told that it is formal as one can muster. If they don't have anything suitable, the castle will provide options. Scanlan offers Tiberius one of his coats, and Tiberius says that he is curious to see what the castle produces for them. Grog says that he doesn't really do formal. The group says that they have some fancy robes in the bag of holding, and Grog says that they won't fit him. Assume tells them to figure it out amongst themselves and takes his leave. And that's where they end the session. So, what do we think of the second half?
First, you got through that summary, so congratulations.
Oh, God, so much dialogue.
So much dialogue. Yeah, that was a long one.
Yeah, so much. I was like, why?
Especially considering it was like an hour of game time. That's a
yeah, it literally took me 3 hours to write the summary because I kept having to pause and rewind because they kept talking over one another.
So much talking. But in terms of story, there are a couple really interesting things that happen here.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is the fact that Percy excuses himself before he says anything, before he talks to Vox Machina. He's just off dealing with things on his own. He's still very bottled up, and they still have no idea what they're getting into.
Yeah.
But Taliesin does a great job of telegraphing how Percy is feeling about it.
Totally.
Without giving away details and without having to say what is going on in his head. He's just so good at making his characters embody all of their struggles. and their backstories. So it's a really small moment, but it's actually one of my favorite ones from this episode.
Yeah.
Because we get a contrast, I think, of having the character that is troubled and has a story to tell, um, reacting in a very different way than, oh, it's my backstory, let me spill. Uh, which we haven't really seen in this campaign, to be fair. It's not something that Critical Role as a whole tends to lean into, but it's where a lot of people would go. Um, and it's little choices like this that I think make this this set of people so successful at telling these kinds of stories.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess it's a really long way to say kudos to Taliesin for character choices.
Yeah, because I'm not sure how much the group knows about Percy's backstory at
Not
this
much at this
point.
point.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the cast knows.
Even the cast is still
Yeah,
kind of in the dark
yeah.
comparatively.
I mean, my favorite thing in this, like, very, very nascent beginning of the Briarwood arc is watching their faces.
Hmm.
Every time the name Briarwood drops, like the first time it dropped was the last time that they were in Amon
Right.
talking to Sovereign Uriel, and Talison's the only one who catches it. The only
Hmm.
one in the group. And he like just goes blank screen for like a good 10 minutes during
Right.
conversation. And then this time around, the group, like the cast, is more aware of what's going on. So the second time the Briarwood name is dropped, they like there's a lot of like side eyeing going on. Like
Yeah. They're still not
that,
sure what to make of it, but now they know it's something to watch for.
yeah,
I think that's kind of as far as they've got with it.
yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about this as you were talking about Percy's reaction to this. I feel like the first half of this episode was all about like healthy coping mechanisms. Like Grog
Yes.
definitely had healthy coping mechanisms and like going to the fighting pit, going to see Groon.
Hmm.
He's doing his best work there. But I think the second half of this episode's all about unhealthy coping mechanisms.
I hadn't gotten there, but it is very accurate.
Like we see it in Tiberius, we see it in Keyleth, we see it in Vex, we see it in Vax, and we see it in Scanlan and Percy. Like all of them are just messes.
Grog is the only one with healthy coping mechanisms, and he's the one who rages.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, it's very direct, for him, he like
Mm.
sees a problem, he acts on the problem. But for the rest of them, they have such convoluted, roundabout ways to deal with their emotions.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think Percy's one of the better ones at making it appear socially acceptable. Uh,
Totally. Yeah.
he has that skill set. Uh,
Hmm.
the other one that struck me this episode was the way the twins deal with Kynan.
Yeah.
Like, talk about unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I think just the fact that like they're so caught up on Vex's tits and all of this
Yeah.
too, I feel is also an unhealthy coping mechanism within this. Like I just there's a lot going on underneath the surface with the
Hmm.
second half. Like because they're talking over each other so much in the second half, they miss what each other are saying too.
Yeah.
Like they might hear it and they even might respond to it, but they don't process what the other person is really saying either.
Hmm. Yeah, that there's a lot of that in the second half. I struggle with episodes that are like that, just to listen to them. So this one was the last half was a little bit rough. Uh, but at the same time, it's super interesting to think about the effect that that has on how the game is played and where these characters are at.
Absolutely.
Um, because going back to the twins, because I think we have the most direct comparison between the two of them. They
Mm,
have the same upbringing essentially.
mm,
They have the same, you know, experiences, but very different outlooks on these situations. And they're not listening to each other at all. Like
Yeah.
they are siblings, they are codependent in unhealthy ways,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they're still not hearing each other, much less
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. Um, and it's interesting to see because normally they're so in tune with each other.
Mm.
And right now they are just not. Um, and this happens a couple other times throughout the campaign, but I think this is the first time we really see the twins especially being this much at odds with each other without being in a flat out fight.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if it's kind of like a fallout from their more joyful reunion in the
Mm,
previous episodes, right? Because they got split for the trial of the take and
right.
they had this like joyful reunion that was kind of not really a joyful reunion. Like, I think everyone wanted it really badly to be a joyful reunion. But
Yeah.
then Vex got pissed about the carpet and people spending money, and she got drunk off her ass and like an unhealthy coping mechanism to deal with all of that. And so, like,
Yeah.
I think Vax then reacted to her displeasure. And, like, I think they were hoping that this joyful
Mhm.
reunion that they were aiming for would kind of like gloss over all of the problems that existed prior to that of like, we're together,
Yeah.
everything's fine again. But you can't
Well,
just like expect those things to go away overnight.
and if there's one thing we know about Vax, it's that any threat to his sister is like the worst thing that could happen in the world. Like that is his hair trigger.
Yeah.
And that's what he ends his thing on. And then she comes back and she's mad.
Yeah.
He protected her. He went out of his way to kill for her. And, yes, it was a contract, but that pushed him over the edge like nothing else would have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so he feels like he's done this great thing for his sister, and his sister is not feeling it, not seeing it in the same way. Um, which doesn't help with the situation in this episode.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
the word that just went through my head is foreshadowing for like the
yeah,
Briarwood arc.
yeah.
I was just like, huh?
There's so much foreshadowing in this
Yeah.
episode, and there's so many iconic things.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I mean, like, even talking about all the tension that's been building with Tiberius within the group, too.
yes.
Like, I feel like they all kind of had a break from that as well in this. Like, they had a lot of breaks from these emotional tensions that were existing in the group during the Trial of the Take episode.
Mm-hmm. And instead of
Yeah.
making it better, it just hyped them up.
Because I think they like forgot they existed and now they're just being faced with the brutal facts of reality that they still have problems.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely interesting to um see how this plays out. And I think we're seeing little bits of it throughout the episode, right? We're
Yeah.
seeing it play out in inter party ways. It becomes very, very obvious when they deal with Kynan.
Yes.
Exactly where their heads are at. Um, and I think it's important to kind of look at their reactions individually. It's so easy to lose who's talking about what.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they all have very telling interactions with Kynan.
Yeah.
Even, you know, Tiberius has one of the most unique reactions, right? And he has his own way of dealing with Kynan, which doesn't match anybody else's. But nobody, even the people who are more on the same page, are not on the same page. Everybody is off on their own thing right now.
I mean, I think Keyleth's reaction is fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with Keyleth's reaction, if I'm honest.
Like, absolutely fascinating. Like, I find Keyleth just a fascinating figure in general, and I'm sure we'll get into that in later episodes. But I think this is when we start seeing a lot of her maladaptive coping mechanisms in the
Mm,
second half. Like,
yeah.
she has a tendency to day drink. She has a tendency to especially day drink after traumatic events.
Yes.
And then also in this Kynan interaction, like she's both criticizing Vax and supporting him at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting dynamic as well. And like we see how that plays out later on as well, but it's just really interesting because she's kind of agreeing with Vex, but kind of agreeing with Tiberius, but also kind of agreeing with Vax at the same time.
I'd be more inclined to say she doesn't really know what she wants. She just
Mm.
knows that she didn't like what happened.
Mm.
She doesn't know what the answer is. She's not confident in how she wants to feel or how she does feel about it. But she knows that this isn't what she would have chosen, but she doesn't have an alternative.
Mm.
Um, and that to me is very emblematic of where she's at as a character
Yes,
of this.
absolutely.
I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to be, the one making decisions, but I don't have the life experience to know what that looks like for me.
Yeah.
Um, and she's in a weird spot with this, I think, where the Ashari tend to be peaceful people. They're
Mm.
not prone to some of the violence and harsh realities that the twins especially have faced in their
Yeah.
upbringing.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's seen her values at odds with these people that are her key to success.
Mm.
Um, and having that right after her Aramente to Pyra is an interesting dichotomy for her to have to deal with that she is not prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back to the maladaptive coping
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I mean, that might be a perfect segue into the next question is like what personal experiences are coming to mind for us here.
Um, I think the thing that struck me most this time around um, is how much I relate to Percy's coping mechanisms and how that's maybe not a good thing. But that whole bottle it up, keep it to yourself, and go deal with it on your own in your own way kind of thing is very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's why that moment of Percy just walking away kind of hits so hard for me, is because that's exactly what I would do. I just, try to keep the game face on and then go find a way to be by myself and deal with it on my own.
Mm.
Um, it's not something that's happened recently, but it is something that I relate to in ways that I probably shouldn't.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes me think about like how I relate to these coping mechanisms and like I have a mixture of all of them. Like I am very Vax like in that I run into action when faced
Mhm.
with adversity because that is usually the most helpful thing when tragedy occurs is for someone to do something about it.
Yeah.
Whether that something is actually useful or not or beneficial is questionable, but I do tend to rush into action. And most of the time, my instincts work out well. I don't like knock anyone unconscious with a pommel of daggers, but
Slightly different life experiences.
yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I can also, like, in my previous life and like previous years of Claire being Claire, like I did have very Keyleth reactions to things. So like I did use alcohol as a coping mechanism a lot throughout my life. And
Mhm.
I can definitely relate to her being like, I don't know what should be happening, but I don't like what is happening right now. Like I can very much
Yeah.
relate to that. I'm much more of a Percy nowadays. Where I'm just like, I'll just okay, and then I'll just go screen in my bedroom. Thanks.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The more I think about all of the, maladaptive coping mechanisms, I also think I've got a lot of that vex of the peacemaker and smooth things over, even if it's, to my own detriment or to the detriment of the group, because it's that eldest daughter stereotype
Mm.
of the peacemaker, and trying to keep the whole family copacetic with each other, even in weird situations. And I think Vex has a lot of that as her
Mm-hmm.
coping mechanisms. It's just like avoid and smooth over and charm and try to keep everything as calm as possible. And I think between the two, you've got a couple coping mechanisms that are popular but maybe not effective.
Yeah. I mean, the other personal experience that's coming to mind for me is this kind of whole like split, regroup, problems still exist thing.
Yes.
Because, like, for example, going on vacation, like you go on vacation and you're like, I have no more problems. Life is like the world is my oyster, and then you get back to real life and you're like, oh, all those emails are still waiting for me.
I'm still at the same job I was at when I left.
Oh, my apartment is still dirty. It didn't clean itself. Like, how did that not happen?
Yeah. Like, I still need to take my car to a mechanic.
Right?
It didn't fix itself.
I honestly think that that's one of my biggest Achilles heels, I think, is expecting things to fix themselves.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes in life, it does fix itself. Like either time will fix it, or some other solution will come along down the road, or someone else will deal with it. That's one of the reasons why I like being a renter. I like own my own house, because I can be like, that water heater that's not working, not my problem.
Fair enough.
But at the same time, I still have to like deal with the things that don't fix themselves on their
Yeah.
own. And I think I find myself often getting like resentful or bitter or just like frustrated that they still exist. Like we were talking about this before we started recording, but like I'm currently on vacation this week. And I decided that this week would be the week that I deep cleaned my apartment, because it has not been deep cleaned in 2 years. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, yes, I'm sweaty and frustrated after doing it. But at the same time, I found drifts of dog hair underneath my bed. Not just tumbleweeds, drifts of dog hair underneath my bed
Yeah.
that I had no idea was there because I never look under my bed. And so, like, that's the kind of stuff that is not going to go away on its own.
No. You wish it would, but no.
No, my dog isn't automatically just going to like reattach it to herself one day.
Yeah.
It's just funny how those things just happen. So, like, yes, there's definitely lots of personal experiences that are going to mind with all of this. But what are we going to do about it is the question.
Well, I think the most obvious choice here is to do a little bit of self-reflection, um,
Yeah.
and kind of take a look at coping mechanisms, and really think about how they're impacting my ability to do anything about the problems in my life. Um, because keeping things calm and copacetic is not going to actually help me solve the problem. As much as it makes me feel better, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to do anything in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a moment to reflect and think a little bit about the efficacy of some of my own habits.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's cleaning my apartment before I go on vacation.
See, I could say that, but I will never do it. So I'm just not going to pretend.
It's one of the lessons that I've had to slowly learn over the past few years, of just like, I just feel better coming home to a clean apartment than coming home to a dirty apartment.
Yeah.
And I've just had to like bite the bullet and actually do it. Like if the very least I do is change my sheets before I go on vacation, like that's enough for me to not feel like I'm coming home to more problems than I left.
That's fair. I tend to go the opposite direction where if I leave it dirty, then I will actually empty my suitcase and deal with the travel,
Mm,
where I'm less likely to do that if the rest of my apartment is clean.
mm,
So,
no.
habits.
I feel that. I mean, yeah, it's all about the self-awareness that we're talking about, right?
Mm.
Of being like, okay, what habits am I facing the dirty facts of reality, brutal facts of reality. We're talking about dirty apartments, so my mind is in the gutter right now.
I mean, it kind of works.
Looking at the brutal facts of reality and being like, all right, am I actually going to do something about this, or am I just going to continue down this spiral of doom?
Yeah. Well, here's to making positive changes.
One positive change at a time. First, I need to tackle the drifts of dog hair underneath my bed.
There you go. You tackle the dog hair, I'll tackle the laundry, and we'll both be better off.
There we go. There we go. Well, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I'm good.
Per usual, this is one of our personal therapy sessions. So, audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and therapy insights with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. Special thanks to Alice for joining me on this episode. It's been a pleasure.
Always happy to be here.
So next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 24, Part 1, and joining me will be Petal. And I'm always looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in coming on this podcast and sharing your perspectives, please reach out to me via email or on Tumblr, and I'll send you the sign-up form, not sign you the send-up form. Same thing. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR for all the juicy updates. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, everyone.
Bye.